Hey everybody, Adam here from Menta Watches. A couple weeks ago, we were able to travel to Geneva, Switzerland to take a look at some of the over 1,000 watches for sale across 4 different auction houses. In this video, we're going to sit down with Antiquorum and Sothebys to take a look at some of their watches that they had for sale. Hope you guys enjoy. So our first stop of the day is at Antiquorum Auctioneers in Geneva, a strictly watch-based auction house, unlike Christie's, Phillips and Sothebys, who also sell other items such as art and jewelry. Antiquorum has been around for a very, very long time, specializing in watches, and their catalogs are always incredible because they feature sometimes 400, 500, 600 lots, whereas the other auction houses usually cap out around 200 to 250 lots. I've asked my good friend Julien, who is the director of the auction house here, to pick out a few of his favorite lots, and I picked out a few lots that I found interesting to discuss with you guys and go over and show you my process, a little bit behind the scenes of how we look at these watches in anticipation of bidding on them. So let's take a look. So we are joined by Julien Schaerer of Antiquorum Auctioneers, one of the directors here and a good pal. He has been kind enough to sit with us while we take a look at these watches and educate us as we take a look at them. There's some interesting tidbits about these watches that I myself don't even know. I pulled out 3 watches, he pulled out 4. And so the first one I wanted to start with that he pulled out is a watch I've personally never seen before, something absolutely incredible from a design perspective. It is a Patek Philippe with an animal on the top. All right, so Julien, walk us through this watch.
Yeah, so it's one of the incredible discoveries of this auction season. We are really glad to find one of the only 2 known so far chameleons made by Patek Philippe. Obviously, it was a independent case maker that did it for Patek Philippe. There's only one other that's known, which is actually in the Patek Philippe Museum. Up until now, there's never been another that's appeared on the market. This is the second one that exists. By talking to the case maker, we actually found out that he only made 6 of these pieces in total. Out of these 6, it is really possible that he made some for other manufacturers, but only 2 so far are known, including this one, which is a real true masterpiece of design. There's nothing you can say, you've never seen anything like it, and the quality of the craftsmanship is just unbelievable.
So let me ask you a question. When you are evaluating this watch, I'm assuming you ask Patek Philippe for archive information. What does the archive say on this?
The archive that obviously comes with it just says a bracelet watch in the shape of a chameleon.
Wow.
With the matching case and obviously the movement.
So it was commissioned by Patek Philippe?
Commissioned by Patek Philippe, absolutely.
Where does this watch come out of?
Yeah, it was actually found here in Geneva. The niece of the owner brought it to us, and her uncle had bought watch at an auction in the south of France about 30 years ago.
Let's take a look. Wow, the condition is spectacular.
It's amazing, yeah. It was made in 1949.
1949. And it doesn't even look like the dial's ever been restored. So when we're looking at these Patek Philippe watches, any Patek Philippe watch, especially from this era, keep in mind, as we've talked about in prior videos, that over 90% of these watches have been restored. Patek Philippe made these watches with the intent that the dials would be restored. They made them so that the hard enamel signatures could be refilled, that the markers could be removed, that the zapon or the fine finish that's on the dial could be reapplied. It affects the value, of course. It just depends on the level of restoration and how well it was done. This watch, it doesn't even appear that it's ever been restored. But what we're always looking for is on a long signature when it says Patek Philippe & Co., comma after Patek, the accent over the E in Geneva below it. Those are usually not hard enamel, so they are the first to go. They get washed off very easily. Also looking at the markers to see if they've ever been removed and applied, and obviously the finish on the dial to see how much it's been cleaned, and this watch seems to be in spectacular condition. Wow. Incredible piece. I've personally never seen this before. Wow, so this is the second ever peer market?
Second ever PRTM market on it. 50 to 100.
Seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable for what it is.
I mean, who knows what the market really is, because there's no comparable.
Exactly.
There's no market comps, but this is a special piece. Congratulations on sourcing it. All right, so let's skip to the other 2 Patek Philippe's. We'll start with those. So these are 2 watches that you have pulled out. We have a very beautiful yellow gold Patek Philippe Calatrava with a black dial. Patek Philippe from this era to find with a black gilded gilt dial is incredibly rare. They're incredibly hard to find. Most of them that you do find have been redone. But why don't you walk us through what this watch, I'm assuming it's a reference 570.
Absolutely. So, you know, it's one of the favorite ones by collectors for the time-only Calatrava. I mean, the first attractiveness of it is its size, because obviously it has the really nice oversized 36 millimeter case, which gives it a lot of presence on the wrist.
Right.
You always see them, usually the most popular, the white gold. You see it either with center seconds or with sub-seconds, or the two variations. This is a sub-second one. We discovered that watch in Germany not so long ago, from the original family as well.
Wow.
Extract says black, which is always something, which is huge, very important in a watch like that. And as Adam said, the black dials are really a handful. I mean, we've only seen a couple of one. It's the only one that we've seen with a full railroad track, which really fills out the dial nicely, gives it a really different look. And the condition just speaks for itself. It's been untouched. It's you can see we haven't polished. We just left it as is. It's just an amazing watch. I mean, look-wise, it's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, so what Julien's talking about, first of all, with the extract, is that you always, when you're applying for an extract from Patek Philippe, to take a look at the dial remark to make sure, because they have records of everything, to make sure that the dial color matches the watch. So as Julien mentioned, this is a black dial, and the extract reflects the fact that it has a black dial. If it said something like white, you would know that the dial has been replaced.
But also, I just want to add this, sometimes they actually don't even have that mentioned in the archive. When they don't know, they just put type.
Exactly.
And there you're unlucky that it actually says type, but here we're lucky enough that they did have that recorded, and of course it says black.
Yeah, it's very important to the provenance of the watch and to knowing that the watch was born this way. So let's take a look at the condition. Wow, the dial is very nice. So these are
like a nice even patina on top of it. You can see like slight oxidation to the dial from age.
It's very honest. Yeah, it's a real watch, Wow, really nice. So what you want to look out for on these watches, as Julien mentioned in his video, is taking a look at, first of all, if we're talking about the case, the level of polishing that's been had to it. With Patek Philippe, always important to take a look for the hallmarks, which can usually be found on the side of the case, in between the lugs, or on the back of the lugs. It all just depends on which watch you're referring to. This one seems to even have its original strap and buckle, which is another nice bonus. Really beautiful watch, really something very difficult to find in black with a black gilt dial. It's my personal preference, my personal favorite, and I think pretty much all collectors, based on the rarity and just the absolute beauty of it. The way these dials kind of shine back at you is just something to behold. So the last Patek Philippe that you pulled out, because I pulled out one that we'll talk about in a minute, is one of my favorite Patek Philippe chronographs, the reference 1463. This one appears to be in rose gold with a matching rose gold dial. It also has a beautiful bracelet on it. Is this bracelet original to the watch?
It's a gift bracelet.
Yeah, but it matches perfectly.
Matches perfectly. Doesn't mention the bracelet, and as we said in the description, it was originally born. It comes with two dials. Was originally born on the silver dial.
Oh, okay.
And then the buyer who actually bought the watch many years ago actually went out on a quest to find a matching pink gold dial because he liked the look. He was lucky enough to source one, which is almost virtually impossible today. And he liked the rose gold look, so found a really nice vintage Giffre bracelet to add on it. The extract says silver dial on it and born on leather.
Right, and the dial is included though, the silver dial.
The silver dial is included as well.
And it's important to keep in mind that, especially as watch collecting has grown over the years, back in the day, lots of people would go into walk into Rolex or Patek, and they would like the watch as presented to them, but they would want to change it to modify it to their personal specifications. So this client in particular wanted rose gold dial from the original silver, but fortunately he kept the original silver dial, which is very important, so that you could buy this watch, or one could buy this watch knowing that it is quote unquote all original, because they're able to reinstall the original dial and bring it back to how it left the factory. I'm surprised he was able to source a rose gold dial for this. That's something that's almost impossible to find.
I think it's one of those things, when you were looking at those kind of things 20 years ago, it was much easier to find a spare dial for something like that than it would be today.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the value of one of these dials is tens of thousands of dollars. Absolutely, because you just cannot find it. The condition of the watch is beautiful. The case is incredible.
Spectacular. The case is thick. You have the hallmarks. They really...
The hallmarks are... So we have a hallmark in between the pushers here. We have a hallmark right below the pinhole on the side of the case, and they're very crisp. When you're looking at hallmarks, you really want to loop them and make sure that the engravings are crisp, because they would stamp them in there, and as they get polished, they're less and less visible. And each of the hallmarks has a different symbol in it depending on what the hallmark is, and you could even Google and get a list of all of these Swiss hallmarks, French hallmarks, to take a look at what you're looking at. But wow, I personally love the 1463 because it's a great size, 35 millimeters, but it's also a waterproof chronograph. So it has a screwback case on it that was waterproof. The first reference that had the screwback case for Patek Philippe was the 565. And also the pushers on the 1463 is absolutely something special. I'm going to let Julien pronounce the name of these pushers.
It's the Tacitondi or Mille Righe.
But I can't pronounce it.
Absolutely, where you can see these little marks all around. You can actually see the same on some of the Movados.
Exactly.
They have the same finish, but it just makes it's just like a sexy little extra touch.
Yeah, and the condition of this watch, really, really nice. The dial looks absolutely beautiful. I mean, this is the rose gold dial that the client changed it to. I'm assuming the silver dial is also in great condition. He probably didn't use it, you know, so it's probably been sitting in a drawer for a long, long time. And interestingly enough, this gay phrase rose gold bracelet that is on this watch with straight lug end links is very, very rare and valuable in its own right. I would put the value of this bracelet alone in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. Because it's another thing you can't find. It's period correct for the era, and Gay Phrase, who is the bracelet maker, is considered the most desirable of all bracelet makers because he made bracelets, or they made bracelets for Patek, for Rolex, and their standalone bracelets are absolutely beautiful. You see them a lot of beads of rice style or oyster style, really, really special stuff that is becoming much, much harder to find. Beautiful watch, absolutely beautiful watch. You pulled out some nice stuff.
Thanks.
The Patek Philippe that I pulled out was a very simple reference, 3700, and I wanted to talk about this watch because this is a watch that, as of a year ago, like all Nautilus, were sky high. You know, the sky was the limit. These watches were selling for, they just kept appreciating at such crazy rates. A year ago, this very watch would have been selling for in the 150 to 170 range. When I was flipping through the catalog, I noticed the estimate was 80 to 120, which I thought was very, very reasonable. And I think it's something interesting to discuss about how, you know, these watches have declined a lot in price over the past 6 months, and I think there might be an opportunity for people who were priced out of the market in the past 6 months to now get into these nice original jumbo 3700s, also Adam RP Royal Oak 5402s at reasonable prices. And I think these watches in the long run will be a solid purchase if you're looking to buy, wear it for your wrist, enjoy it, and have something that could possibly appreciate in the future, because these watches are truly special. This one in particular, the 3700, this is a /1 with a non-tapered bracelet. The /11 came later. Really are special watches. They were Genta's most popular design, this in the Royal Oak. And I think if any watch is primed to make a strong comeback, it would be these, because they are the first of its kind, some of the most popular sports watches of all time, and out of production, obviously, for a long time. So you're beholden to what's available on the market and the condition that you find them in. So let's take a look at this one condition-wise. Wow, case is very, very strong. So when we're looking at the condition on these watches, what you want to look out for, first we'll start with the case, but you want to see the level of polish, which is usually easily indicated by the bevels on the lugs. If it's a good polisher, they would have made sure the lines were straight on the bezel. Finish on the sides and bottom of the case would be correct for the era. It all depends on the experience of the person polishing it. But if this watch was ever polished, it was done lightly. It was really, really strong case. And next you moved on to the dial. Obviously, you always want to make sure that it's the correct dial. There are great references out there who review and research which dials are correct for which eras. This appears to be the correct dial. It looks like, from afar, like a Type 2 dial. It has the accent over E in Geneva, which is usually the first thing you should look for, along with the sigmas next to Swiss at the bottom, to make sure that it is a factory original dial. There are some factory original dials with sigma and no accent over E. It just depends on what year the watch is. Those are usually fitted in later cases, circa end of 1970s going into the 1980s. You also want to take a look at how badly the dial is peeled. So this one has a nice tropical appearance where the dial started to age brown, but it just depends on how even those are, how splotchy it is. These dials peeled very easily, sometimes giving the appearance of being tropical, but it's not very attractive. So although attractiveness is subjective, been kind of standardized that the more even the patina and peeling is on the dial, the more attractive it is. And this one appears to be very nicely aged, I would say incredibly attractive for my eyes at least. Likewise, you want to take a look at the lume, make sure the lume is still original tritium. The hands have not been replaced, which is usually pretty easy to tell by just looking at the diameter of them and the thickness of them. The later service hands would be thicker. But overall, really attractive watch, and I think, again, I just wanted to point this one out just because, and by the way, original bracelet, always look at the clasp to make sure the logo here is embossed. I really think there's a big opportunity to collect and purchase these original jumbo 3700s, original Royal Oak 5402s, and get into them at a price point that is far less than they were trading for 1 to 2 years ago, and take advantage of that market uncertainty to pick up one of these iconic Genta designs at a fair price. We have 3 watches left, 1 that Julien picked out and 2 that I picked out. Let's start with Julien's pick, which I can already tell why he picked it out. Walk us through this watch. It's spectacular.
I mean, listen, it's one of those things, we've all, Adam and I, we've all seen hundreds, if not thousands of 6263s. Steel, of course, a lot. Gold, a little bit less. But for me, that happens to be the nicest combination. I mean, it's black dial, with a champagne sub-dials. But there, really what makes it's the set. It's almost all the way to the end of the production. So it's a R serial, 1988 as a sale date. And it's actually new all stock. I mean, it's full set, comes with its original punch papers, originally sold in Italy. And as soon as you have it in the hand, you just know. I mean, it still has its case sticker on the back. The hallmarks have never been touched. I mean, it's just the perfect example of a time capsule watch. The bracelet is as, tight as you could. There's really nothing to say about it.
Correct, 71 hand links. So this is a yellow gold vintage Daytona reference 6263 with a more desirable, they made black and champagne dials. The black dials go for a premium over the champagne. They're more favored by collectors, but as Julien was just saying, the spectacular part about this particular example is just truly the condition. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people claiming new old stock this, blah, blah, blah. This truly appears to be in absolutely untouched condition. Wow, even the sticker is just perfect. Usually the stickers get worn and you can't see the reference number or the coronet still on it. The reflective is, and I think that's also probably because he said this is an R serial, so it's towards the end of production, so it's a little bit newer. Right. It's not like from the early 70s. So somebody really barely used this or stuck it in a drawer, and you said it's a full set, box paper.
Set.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna sell for quite the premium, I think.
And it's good, it also gives you a reference of what a new or stock watch should really look like. I mean, you see the finish on the case, on the lugs. You also see, the pinhole, which is so small and so tight. I mean, it's and this is why it's so important to be able to do these kind of previews and to be able to see, because you see this kind of quality of what it looks like. And often people are trying to, as you said, peddle them as new or stock, and they rearrange it as a new or stock, repolish it properly, or try to make it look as new as possible. But there you just know that this is the reference point of what a new watch is.
Absolutely, what it should look like. So first, when we're talking about the case, as Julien just mentioned, you want to look at the pinholes, which are these on the sides of the case. When these watches are polished, the pinholes, you'll see them be closer to the edge of the case or closer in. You'll see wear to them. Always loop them and see how rounded they are. When they're unpolished, it should be like a straight finish on the surface of the pinholes. But you could tell right away, judging by this case, if you are able to get great pictures of it, that this case is unpolished and it's never been, touched. Absolutely spectacular condition. The dial looks to be perfect as well. The lume looks to be perfect as well. It has its original gold Oyster 7205 bracelet with correct 71 end links, if you can see there at the bottom. And that's important because a lot of the end links were replaced, or they took a bracelet off of a gold date model or steel date model if it's a steel watch, with like 57 end links. 71 and variations of 71, like 71N, are absolutely the correct end links, or 271. It depends on the watch, but these end links by themselves, or this bracelet by itself, is absolutely very expensive and very, very difficult to find. To find it still on the watch is incredible. Correct MK2 pushers. The easiest way to tell the pushers is judging by the finish on the pushers. It should be a smooth surface with no lines. The service pushers have lines in the middle of the pusher. Overall, spectacular example. I'm excited to see what this will fetch. I'd love to bid on it, but I think it's going to go past the point of no return. But you never know. Listen,
never know.
In these auctions, you always have to be ready. I picked up some amazing watches because everybody thought they were going to go very high, or just, you know, with the amount of watches for sale this weekend, you guys have how many lots?
531.
531. And all the other auction houses have anywhere from, let's say, 120 to 250.
Right.
There's over 1,000 watches for sale in a weekend.
Right.
So it's really hard to keep track of everything.
There is. But the thing is that there's always opportunities.
Right.
And, you know, time and time again, you know, you proved that fact that, you know, you have to be there and you have to follow it through.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's sometimes when people are sleeping or not paying attention, those are the best opportunities for you to come in, make a bid, and actually do it. The only mistake is not trying.
Exactly. I agree with you. That's why even if I think a watch is going to go for more than I'm willing to pay for it, I'll put in a bid just to be sure, because you never know. And every once in a while, you get something that you think, oh, it's going to sell for 20% more than I'm willing to pay, but then it doesn't.
Right.
And if you didn't put in the bid, you would be upset that you didn't get the watch.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have 2 watches left, 2 that I pulled out that as I was flipping through the catalog, I thought looked interesting. Let's start with the Rolex. This is one of my favorite references, circa 1940s. It is a chronograph reference 3525, otherwise known as the Prisoner of War watch, because this reference, as soldiers were captured in the 1940s in World War II, Rolex would sell these watches to them, and that they were prisoners of war at a discounted price, I believe, because they were prisoners of war. They made a bunch of different dial variations. This is my favorite, with a black dial, black gilt dial. It looks to still have its original radium bloom, which I absolutely love, and usually gives the dial a nice patina. But this one, as I was looking through the catalog, had some provenance, and there's an engraving on the back that says
Absolutely.
Leon W. Brown. And not all of them, just to why this provenance is important, not all of them were prisoner of war watches. A lot of them were, and it has a number on the back, so USAAF. Wow.
Right.
So this has like real provenance.
It's real provenance. I mean, it's the kind of best of the story, you know, that you can find. Obviously, it's lucky that he had his name engraved on the back. We found out that he was actually a pilot, obviously with the U.S. Air Force during Second World War, flying in B-19s.
Wow.
Was actually shot over France. Then some of the crew managed to escape. He unfortunately was captured in France and transferred over to Germany, to Stalag, where he was kept as a prisoner of war, and actually made it through, luckily for him, to the end of the war, and was liberated by the Russians when they liberated those camps. And what is actually really nice, and I think this is one of those nice facts about these prisoner of war watches, is if you actually look on the back, you actually see this tiny little engraving around here where, you know, they make the notch to be able often to open the case back, because obviously they didn't have the means at the time to have the tools to open it, and they needed a way to actually open the case back. And on a lot of these military watches, a Rolex, and also on some of the others, you see this little nudge that they put, which allows you to open the case back much easier, or with really rudimentary tools to allow the opening of the watch. So for me, they're really historical pieces that really tell a piece of history.
And I love watches like that tell a story. And that's why I think we all love, and I assume people watching this video love vintage watches, because each of them have their own history and story to tell. Each of them are different. There's no 2 watches alike. This is special, though. I mean, this is literally seen war, you know?
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned the notches on the back that they created, because a lot of people would take a look at that and be like, oh, somebody damaged the case.
Right.
But in reality, they did it. You know, I mean, yes, they did damage the case technically, but it's part of the watch's history, and you have to think back to the time when they would have needed to do something like that.
Right.
And by the way, on this one, it's great because they didn't damage it so far that it's, first of all, even very, very noticeable, and number 2, that you couldn't still open it with the tool that's required to open this case back.
Right.
So it wasn't done too deep. When we're inspecting this reference in particular, always take a look at the back of the case, because the outside of the case back will have the reference and serial number right on the back. And a lot of times, as these cases were polished, the serial number gets worn down and not visible. So it looks like this case, if it was polished, it was done lightly. It still has very strong, thick, and even lugs. These lugs usually get worn down quickly. And it's generally, if you look at one that's unpolished versus polished, it's generally pretty easy to tell, depending on how deep they polished it. Important to look on these, obviously, with a black gilt dial, how nice the surface of the dial is, how much damage there is. And there is patina on this dial, but it's actually beautifully even and really, really well preserved, considering this was a guy who was taken prisoner and presumably he wore this while engaged in military activity. Absolutely incredible that it's this well preserved. The lume seems to all still be there. I haven't deeply inspected it, but from a cursory look, it looked original. It's just a wow watch. Always try to buy watches with great provenance like this. They will always be incredibly desirable and always have a great story to tell. Fantastic watch. All right, well, Julien, dude, thank you so much for having us, showing us these watches. I'm going to stick around and inspect, hopefully not all 550 lots that you guys have, but quite a few that I'm going to be interested in bidding on myself. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Adam.
And thanks for showing us.
For our next stop, we got to sit down with Jonathan Buford of Sotheby's Auction House to take a look at some of their marquee lots coming up for sale in a couple weeks in June in New York City. Hope you guys like it.
Okay, so we are here now with Jonathan Buford of Sotheby's, who has brought us out some amazing wristwatches that they have for sale coming up in their June New York City auction. When is that sale?
June the 9th, Friday. It'll be like 10 o'clock.
June the 9th. So
Yeah.
you guys have some time to take a look at their catalog after this video goes live, because I know we usually show watches and then the watches are already sold by the time it goes live. So you will have time to request condition reports, get extra pictures, and bid on these watches. Message Jonathan. I'll have his Instagram and email linked in the description below. Without further ado, what have you pulled out for us today?
5 watches, all vintage. 2 of the Paul Newman watches. So these are sort of the ultimate provenance, unquestionable provenance watches that will come to market probably this year. A fresh to the market, previously unknown Patek.
My eyes are focused on that watch.
1518 pink on pink. You know, we were lucky enough. I was lucky enough to find.
You guys had
everyone
one last year. It was
2020
amazing. Or years ago,
It was, you know, that came out of a safety deposit box in California, been stuck in there for 50 years.
And I remember at the previews then a couple years ago, it was coming up in the next auction. You're like, hey, you want to see something cool? I'm like, absolutely.
We were in the corner over there.
Yeah. And you're like, I was like just shell shocked.
That watch was as close to one that was left the factory in the late 40s.
Insane. Yeah.
This similar, you know, provenance.
I'm looking from afar, but it looks really, really nice.
This was found by the family without crystal. So it's stayed in the family since it was purchased in 47. It's one of 7 known with the longer signatures. So Patek went from doing long signatures, short signatures, end of 47, early 48. So this is one of the last long signatures.
Okay, so I'm going to get into the details of this watch. All right, so what are the last?
And then a Killy, again, a fresh Killy from the original family in California, a rather beautiful one.
36?
Yeah,
Nice.
26.
26, okay.
And then a Omega Speedmaster Gold. This is an astronaut's watch. It's an unnumbered one, but it's a fantastic condition. Comes with accessories. You know, there's a few of these that come to market recently.
Yeah.
There's a huge interest in them. When they come with the accessories and the provenance, they are, you know, some of the most interesting, exciting watches I think ever around.
So let's start with that. So,
yeah.
I mean, you just mentioned that a few of them have come to market recently. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming that the consignor of this watch, correct me if I'm wrong, just an assumption, they rushed to sell this because they saw the recent results, like how strong they've been selling.
Yeah, I mean, this regularly happens. We see it a lot. You see a spectacular result, and then people realize the value of what they have, and they want to take advantage of that moment.
And hold this up.
Yeah.
People can see a little overlay pictures.
So
whose watch was this?
This was Swiggert's watch. So, I mean, he was the astronaut. If you've ever seen the Tom Hanks film, the Houston, We Have a Problem, it was that mission. He was one of the 3 astronauts on that watch.
So engraved in the back of Apollo 13.
Exactly, but it's an unnumbered one, so you know the story.
So there were 26. The first 2 went to Nixon and Agnew. And the rest were given to astronauts from the first several missions.
1 and 2 are in the Omega Museum.
Correct.
So there's the other ones.
You know, they didn't take possession of them. They refused it. I guess because it was probably improper for them to take us. I guess, you know.
By U.S. law, they either had to buy them, or they had to, essentially they were gifted to the government and then they had to, they buy them back. So they didn't take ownership of them. Those are in the Omega Museum. And there have been a few that have been sold recently.
Sold at the back.
I mean, when they come,
I don't know if people will see it, but we'll overlay the picture.
When, you know, these are just spectacularally cool bits of history, right? They're objectively cool watches.
So I just I revealed that I was the purchaser, Sasha Davidoff Brothers, and I purchased one, and that was Gus Grissom's watch. You know, it was number 4 in the series of 26. Right. And, you know, I really was saying, like, forgetting the price and everything like that, I was just happy to own a piece of history. Like, this is a true piece of history.
This is why we love vintage watches, right?
Like, literally history. And, for in my sake, Gus Grissom passed away before he even got the watch. He died in all of one.
I didn't know.
It's crazy. And I remember reading about this one when you guys announced that you were selling it in your press kit, that he never really used it and the family inherited it, and it shows the condition is insane. Similar to the one that I have, because he obviously never used it. So walk us through how you guys got this watch.
I mean, it came into the New York office, and my colleague Janet Pham in New York consigned it. And the nice thing with these watches, and you know this better than anybody, when they come with the accessories, they create an aura around them. Right? They're not just a watch.
But this was consigned from the family.
Yeah.
And most of them that have come to market have not been considered. They've been sold over the years. Only recently, in the past couple years, have they really seen a resurgence, because the first one, Heritage, sold for like $700K, and then Wally Schirra sold for 1.9.
Now the Omega's spectacular results.
So I was the high bid at like 400, and I would no, and I was sweating, and I'm like, oh my god, am I overpaying for this watch? Like, what am I making a mistake? And then it went nuts, and I'm like, I'm an idiot, It sold for 1.9 million.
I would say that's
now clear. Yeah, I think so too.
I just don't think that's being replicated. But I mean, doesn't mean that.
I think it could be replicated maybe for Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin or something like that.
If Armstrong watch comes up, that's the one that could just go gangbusters.
Yeah,
I mean, that really is.
Yeah, I think that will sell for several million. Yeah, exactly.
So, I hate ascribing value. So I think we have a 120,000 to 180,000 estimate on this.
It's very conservative. Yeah,
it's sort of
give people hope.
Yeah, exactly. Well, estimates are used in two ways, right? One is to secure the consignor. They know that the reserve can be at or below near the low estimate, but also they're used for marketing. They're to get people interested. If you've always wanted one of these,
a lot of auction houses use low estimates because it garners up interest. If the estimate on this was 400, 500,000, nobody would bid. Maybe you'd get one bid and everybody would be like,
everybody look it goes, that's a cool thing, and then they flip over to the next page.
And the cool thing about these watches too is that a civilian can actually own them. Any watches that were flown in space are property of the government. So for example, Neil Armstrong's Omega Speedmaster that was flown in space is in the Smithsonian. So you can't own those watches.
I was offered one by an ex-astronaut out of Florida, 18 months ago. And it's heartbreaking because
you can't buy it. I mean, you can buy it, but then you have to keep it to the side for the rest of your life and not tell anybody about it. And that's the whole point of these watches, to share them and collaborate with the community.
It's impossible to describe a value to them.
Yes.
You never actually own them. But there have been stories of NASA sort of almost kicking down doors to get the watches.
Yeah, I believe it. But these were gifts from Omega to the astronauts. They are not property of the government. You are allowed to own these. Okay, well, dude, I'm curious to see what this sells for. I have somewhat interest,
Yes. When we catalogued this, we had to go back. She's got all the NASA logs, all the communications between NASA and the astronauts. So we went through the NASA logs to make sure we had the chronology of, of the words being said on the ship.
That's why I love working with you guys too, because you guys are very detailed.
We try.
Listen, it's hard. It's hard, and I know there's been a lot of criticism of some auction houses, not you guys recently, but it's hard because you guys go through a lot of stuff, And so we have a 6236 Jean-Claude Killy. So that is a Datocompax, and this is the most popular reference of all the Keelys. I think it's because of the case, screwback case. It's similar to the 6234. It's the most contemporary looking case of all of the
I like the design. This one's luminous hands, luminous markers. It has the countersunk gold.
Condition looks very, very nice. And these are usually very hard to find in nice condition. They're very, very worn. Still had radium, so the radium sometimes ate away at the dials.
This is one of those joys of working in auction where we were literally on deadline day and I get a phone call from someone saying, my dad has said I'm allowed to sell my watch.
Oh, wow.
And we'd almost closed the catalogue. We literally had to add another...
this is really honest. It has some lume missing in the hands, but it's all original, A couple kind of nice little patina on the dial, but beautiful. Case is beautiful. Really nice watch. What's the estimate on this?
129.
That's conservative too. Yeah.
Again,
this is a weird market though, because there's been certain examples that have reached like 750K, but then generally, no, I get that. Generally the market settles like anywhere from 200 to 450. You always have to keep your eye on these, just because you never know where they're going to sell. It depends on who's spinning that day. So you could pick up one for a good deal. On several occasions, I've just kind of overlooked them in auction, thinking, it's going to sell for way higher, and then it didn't. And I like, wait, this will always be ready.
Always be on it. You never know, because sometimes we have a lot of interest in the watch and then nothing comes through, and sometimes you have like a ton of bids in the book and then nothing happens.
You
just like when you guys are concentrating on the sales, you can see there's an opportunity.
Yeah, and that's why I like to be here for the auctions. I know it's not possible for a lot of people, but I like to be in the room, just kind of waiting and feeling out what happens. But, you know, a lot of people, just like what happened with me in the Gold Speedy, I thought, the Gus Grissom, 5 people had sent me the auction catalog. I'd purchased from this auction house before, so I already gotten the email and seen it. And I told everybody, listen, I'm not interested because they're going to go crazy, you know? And the day before, Sasha had texted me like, hey, let's just throw in bids. You never know. Yeah. You never know. And he was right. And I think because they had 3 in that one sale, they saturated it. They really didn't do their consigners justice.
You know, that's, again, a conversation for another day. But auction houses, especially as we represent the seller.
Right.
And sometimes that's giving them advice they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And in that instance, perhaps the advice the consigners should have been told is, well, maybe we'll offer 1, possibly 2.
They were putting together a big sale. There was other wristwatches that were worn by astronauts in that sale, and I think they just wanted to have the volume in there and make it a sale. And they only make money if they sell it.
Exactly.
So, you know,
so you're balancing that and trying to get the best advice.
And you probably, consignor doesn't want to wait for the next sale. You know, everybody wants to
change.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to my favorite watch on the tray. This is my all-time favorite reference. It's so cliche, but whenever somebody asks me what's my Grail watch personally, it's Patek Philippe 1518. I would love one in steel. Those are millions and millions and millions of dollars, over 10 million.
Yeah, the last one was 11. They reckon there's 4. We say 4 known because 4 have been publicly traded. Patek records say there might be 8 of them in existence.
Right.
The next
one to come for sale is going to break the 11 million mark. But here we are, rose on rose. So when we're talking about rose on rose, the case is rose gold and the dial matching is also rose gold. This bracelet, wow.
Yeah.
Original bracelet.
Okay, for us. So original
Period
bracelet,
correct.
Correct.
Beautiful bracelet. Look at this.
Yeah. It's not so supple. I mean, it's just amazing. So
does the extract fret bracelet?
Bracelet says on strap. It goes delivered on strap.
Yeah, so somebody put on this bracelet. Thank God for that person.
No.
Oh my God, because you could find a strap, and finding this bracelet is
big money as well.
Big money, yeah, big money.
So the 2 things to notice, or a few things to notice: long signature. So end of 47, early 48, they swapped over to short signature. They removed the and cut.
Yeah, what I was just talking about is the early signatures, or we call them long signatures, say Patek Philippe and Co. And then after this switches to just Patek Philippe, which are the short signatures.
So, and then there are 2 series of cases, but the long signature, short signature dial variants don't marry up with the changing cases. This is a very early 2nd series case with a long dial. The pushes are slightly lower on the case flanks. There's micro differences. So this has hallmarks on the underside of the lug and the inside flank of the case, and not on the side of the case, which the later do.
Yeah.
But I mean, the proportions of those lugs, so many you see of these yellow golds in particular they get worn and they get polished. The lugs just turn to like toothpicks. When you see this, and like the 2021 watch as well, like the thickness and the proportions of those lugs is just...
this case is great.
You can just feel the heft. Yeah. It just feels more significant.
Yeah, I've sold a couple of them in my career, and both of them had been polished. One was great case, lightly polished. The other one had, like you said, it was a little over polished, but it's inevitable. You know, and it's crazy though, because even 1518s that are not very well preserved, not in great condition, they're still incredibly desirable. That doesn't translate to other vintage watches. Sometimes you'll have a watch where if it's not in good condition, nobody wants it, nobody cares. 1518 doesn't matter because they're so special watches. There were so few produced, so little produced, under 300 watches produced. What do you have the estimate at this one set at?
2.5.
Okay, and what did you guys sell the last one for?
9.7.
Yeah.
I mean, that was extraordinary, right? We had 27.
That watch was extraordinary.
We had 27 registered bidders on the day. I think we had 25 people on the phone. It went from 1 to 2 to 3 million in jumps in the hammer price. At $5 million, we saw it had 7 or 8 people on the phone.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
So you had 7 or 8 people willing to pay $5 million plus for that watch. Which just goes to show you it. And I talked about this in a prior video, that how it's extraordinary, how if you look 10 years ago, there was very rarely a 7-figure watch that came up for sale, and even rarer the amount of people, the buyer pool for that watch.
It's only 2 people fighting.
We both know the 2 people.
Yeah.
So now, though, we live in a time where every auction catalog seemingly has multiple 7-figure watches and tons of people willing to pay 7-figure plus for a watch. And I think it's great. I mean, listen, it's getting a little out of control. Like guys like us will never be able to afford some of these watches. Fine, but it shows just how much the watch market has grown. This watch is really nice. Really, really nice, you know?
To it, just feel the significance.
Yeah, I mean, you even see like a nice little patina on the dial. That's natural. It doesn't look like it's been restored, you know.
Yeah,
If it was done incredibly lightly. I don't see.
I'm really reluctant to ever. I never say cases have been unpolished. I never say dials have been unrestored.
Right.
Like you're speculating,
Okay.
and it's a bad opinion. This is just a
Really nice example. You pulled out.
These
Very cool
interesting-
provenance watches.
Yeah,
Tell us about them.
Interesting watches from the front, but you could be mistaken for believing these aren't really important watches. But these are the.
So we have a Zenith Daytona,
Yeah.
white dial,
and we have a white gold
116,
Yeah.
520. Yeah.
But interesting part is the case back.
The case back. So we will overlay pictures, but in case you could see, they say drive very slowly, Joanne, on the more modern Daytona. And on the Zenith Daytona, there is an engraving that is a Rolex 24-hour winner to a one. Who is this guy? Mr. Paul Newman.
We've heard of him.
We've heard of him. Rolex Motorsports Man of the Year 1995. So we have two watches with extraordinary provenance from the great Newman, the man himself. Tell us about these. Where'd you get them?
These come from the family. So we as Sotheby's was selling a number of items for the family. They're doing it. We've got a Paul Newman and Joanna Woodward sale. So Joanna Woodward, his wife, was a more famous star when they got married. And obviously they were married until he died. This watch is white gold. Interestingly, this came.
Oh, it's white gold.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's not a 11650. Oh, okay.
This was gifted to him by her the year before he died, which was actually their gold wedding anniversary.
Right.
So speculation, she hasn't confirmed, but it kind of makes sense that this would have been their wedding anniversary watch before he died. Super cool. It's, I
love the drive very slowly.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than what he did in the past. Yeah.
Crazy. This is emblematic of the other two Newmans that have been sold.
Right.
The 6239 had drive slowly, Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
What did the...
I just love the little tweak. Drive carefully, me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
And interesting, my wife has had that engraved on a watch for me.
Nice.
It's like an homage to it. And this one was gifted to him by Rolex. He won the Rolex Man of the Year award in 1995. So this has got quite a cool history. There was an auction in Antiquorum 25 odd years ago that it was a celebrity watches, and they sold. This was put in it. He was interviewed in it. The catalogue you can still find online, and then the speculation that he bought it back.
Oh, you bought it?
Joanne. So it was in it. There was a bunch of other watches.
You know what it sold for 25 years ago?
$36,000.
A gift. A gift.
Okay.
So who could read the future?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So
it was his. He was awarded it by Rolex. Then it was in that thing. It came back to the family. We can speculate about how, but it's
so. What are the estimates for each watch?
$500,000 for million. And
Which do you think performs better?
I have changed my opinion on this 3 times. I think this.
I think the Zenith Daytona.
Yeah,
just because it's cool because it's a 24-hour, and usually it's a 24-hour Daytona winner. But this one was a winner because he never won the 24-hour Daytona. But they gifted him the watch as a race man of the year, whatever they called it.
Collectors inside and outside the watch collecting community are just mad. Provenance.
Yeah. So yeah, I was talking about that earlier.
Industry.
It's how condition and rarity were so important for several years now. Provenance is becoming very important.
Yeah.
The only difference is that it's obviously a lot more uncommon to find watches with great provenance.
Yeah.
And also to wait around just to buy provenance watches, you never collect any.
Yeah, you've got to wait till they come along. And there is provenance that you can go, really? And when things like this is undisputed, signed by the family, plenty of photographs of him wearing it.
Right.
It's
exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And especially like the Speedmaster before too. Documented, great prop. It never be questioned.
Again, when you come to auction and we ascribe ownership to a watch, from the original family, that kind of thing. People often come to me and go, really, Jonathan, is that from the original family? And you have to be honest as the auction house, but I do understand why people question it.
No, it's like on Instagram all the time. There's always, from the original owner, and then you find out like, well, it was
him and him.
Yeah, exactly. It was the original owner who sold it to this guy who sold it to me, so technically not the original owner, or from some distant relative of the original owner, or some family friend.
So when auction houses, we never actually own anything. This is the property of Joanne Woodward, and then it will go direct link to the buyer who buys it in June the 9th.
Right.
So this is, you can be the second owner of it.
Right. And Joanne Woodward will take a photo with you and share. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
I'll give her a call.
Yeah, all right. You get her phone number. You get her landline, and you get 3 calls.
Yeah.
You phone a friend.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But dude, thank you so much for showing this to us. These are incredible. You guys are putting together a nice little sale. I didn't look at the rest of the stuff because you have a few more things.
Yeah, and I think the sale catalog should be out in the second week of May, and 10 days time. We stagger it out.
We'll see you in a month of the year.
You're fun. Right.
Again, thank you so much for showing these to us. If you're interested in any of these watches when the catalog goes live, send Jonathan a message. Again, his information will be in the description, and good luck with the sale.
Thank you very much, man.
All right, guys, if you've made it this long, thanks for watching. As always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Anything you can do to help us grow the channel. And stay tuned for next week. While we were in Geneva, we were able to sit down with the Davidoff brothers and with Jasper of Amsterdam Vintage Watches, take a look at some of their amazing inventory, and get a feel for the market and what their read is on things. Hope you guys enjoy. Bye.